Hey, Cannapreneurs. Before we get started with today's show, I just want to mention one of our sponsors, because it really does cost a little bit of money to get a radio show, a podcast, a video production, social media, a website. Everything that's included in bringing you this show requires a little bit of investment, and our sponsors have stepped up and done that for us. Today, I want to highlight Dairy Berry's Recording Studio. Dairy Berry's Recording Studio, located in Arvada, Colorado, is your local recording studio with affordable rates, well experienced, and will make your music, your show, or any audio you have sound great. Take a look at dairyberriesrecordingstudio.com or give Mark a call at 303-456-8216. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. Now on to the show. Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project with Brainstorm. Once again, bringing you your weekly podcast from the CCP studios high up in Denver, Colorado. Here exploring the business side of this newly emerging Colorado economy, focusing on the business, the patient, the user, to the retailer, to the geek in the garage, creating that next innovation in cannabis. This is the first media platform to help fellow cannapreneurs build sustainable businesses while living the lifestyle. I am so thankful to be back in 2015 with the show. Already moving along. Can you believe it? Already a couple weeks into January. Have you made your resolutions? I haven't. I don't believe in resolutions. I just believe in constantly doing. In other words, I don't wait for a special date to come along to make a goal or an objective or a resolution. I don't resolve to anything based on a calendar. I do it based on the moment, what's needed, and where I want to go, and what is going to get done. This is the type of thinking I take into my philosophy with life and business and so much more. And I want to start off 2015 on a positive note and make sure that I'm organized. We consume in the beautiful product of cannabis does not mean we have to allow for cannabis to make us disorganized, confused, or any other way less efficient than a hard-working worker bee. Let's make sure this 2015, our resolution is to make the industry more credible. You see, when people ask me, what do? I used to say, well, I'm just in media and marketing. And then I started saying I was a podcaster, which inevitably led to, well, what do you podcast? What's your show? Dance around the issue so many times, I've come to resolve. I'm a podcaster who does a show about cannabis, specifically about the industry side of it here in Colorado, but I'm a podcaster, a newly emerging industry also. Podcasting, something that maybe you thought of or something that you would like to partake in here at the CCP Cannabis Community Project radio show. This podcast needs people out there in the community who want to be part of the community. Come get involved. Be on a microphone and put together a segment. Come produce your own show. We'll help you out. Let's build a network because media is just as much needed. This year, I'm going to get organized by making sure that my business, my radio show, my media, and everything else is in line. Organization is going to be my key to success this year. I will need to make sure because I plan on being busy. The busier you are, the more money you're going to make. So the key is to stay busy. Well, how do you stay busy? You stay busy not by simply just running around like a madman, but by being organized. So I'm going to use every access to technology and power I can this year to be organized and start my business. What are you going to do this year? What is your resolution? What have you resided to make yourself this year, this 2015? How old are you? Doesn't matter. What do you want to do? Doesn't matter. So what matters then? What are you doing? What are you doing this year, right now, even as you listen to this? You know, the whole reason I made this show an audio show is so you could multitask. Listen to it as you do something else. That is the eternal question. Not to be or not to be, but to do or not to do. What are you doing? If you're not doing something towards what you want to be doing, well, you're probably doing something towards what somebody else wants you doing. And I assume that pays less. So figure out what makes you happier. Working in a less paying job with somebody else telling you what to do? That's what I resolved to many years ago. And that's what I'm going to continue on this New Year's as my unspoken and always burning flame eternally resolution, and my always eternal flame burning resolution to stay on track, to be self-employed, an entrepreneur, a cannapreneur. This is my goal. I don't need to wait for January the 1st to say it. This is what I wake up for every morning. What do you wake up for? What do you wake up for? What keeps you up at night? Hey man, how's it going?
Good.
What do I call you? Do I call you a gorilla healer, or what do you prefer to be called by?
My friends call me B. I go by Burnt MD, the microphone doctor. You can look me up. Just Google Burnt MD. I make music. I throw shows. I help people. I have a charity called Gorilla Healer.
Are you a business or an organization or just an individual?
Gorilla Healer is a 501c3 nonprofit charity based out of Colorado. We provide free educational services as well as donate natural care to high-risk, low-income patients with life-threatening ailments. We have donations that come in into our emergency relief fund, and we distribute to people in need.
Gorilla healer in the sense
unconventional methods of healing, I guess you could say.
And you're not saying like you're a holistic healer, you're just specifically doing cannabis-related type treatment.
You know, it's really about diet, healthcare, and lifestyle. The fact is, a lot of people hit me up with cancer. A lot of people hit me up with ailments where cannabis can help, and they've been on a slew of medications that have been ruining their life.
How did you get started?
Well, people died. You know, unfortunately, most people get started in this thing when it touches them. When parents have to fight to keep their children alive, when parents are being criminalized for wanting to heal their children, when people are being criminalized for wanting to heal themselves, something has to change. And after a while, it turned into a situation where I hadn't done any business or focused on any finances. And, you know, you're paying bills and you're doing your thing, and you know, I like to call it the great hemorrhage, and it's not fully over, but Gorilla Healer. How can I turn away? I got a 4-year-old at Children's Hospital 10 minutes away from me. We're trying to keep alive. I got a patient who literally her life has been changed. She was supposed to get a knee replacement surgery. I got people with cancer who are hitting me up feeling better than ever. I got people with non-stop ailments. It's never going to stop. People are always going to be sick until we start addressing the preventative measures. You know, we can't minimize risk on a sliding scale, so we can scholarship people that can't afford it, and the people that can, they will pay for it, and it'll be a successful venture and be self-sustaining. I have so many different people that want to help build hemp houses. I have a project, my friend Jason Love, who I'd love to build the what I call the Hemp Educational Learning Program, which is going to be a hempcrete building, a hemp educational learning center, essentially, where interactive learning. We're also on Instagram, Gorilla Healer, and on Twitter. So remember, that's GUERILLA Healer.
Excellent, man. Hey, that was great. It was, thanks for your time. Excellent. Good one. Peace. Hey, if you have an idea or some thoughts about business, maybe you have a business you would like to promote on the show, contact me, brainstorm at cannabiscommunityproject.com.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Commodities Exchange? CCX is the premier wholesale trading platform for licensed cannabis businesses around the country. If you don't have a state-issued license, that's okay. Anyone over 21 can sign up on CCX to get a glimpse of the first trade-driven overview of the cannabis industry. Becoming a member at CCX is fast, easy, and best of all, free. So sign up at www.canexchange.com or call us at 1-800-498-3CCX. Whether you need to sell your surplus or fill your shelves, CCX is building bridges for your business.
On last week's HR update with Scott Fable.
Yeah, next week, let's talk a little bit about minimum wage and what that looks like and means to everyone out there.
Let's talk about average wage.
Average wage.
Average wage.
Let's talk about average wage.
Antoine from Bubble Sonics giving his opinion there. Go ahead. You want to join us next week?
Yeah, I think I might join you in that conversation.
All right.
'Cause I think people just always talk about the minimum, but if the average don't go up, if you raise the average, the minimum will rise as well.
All right. Well, there you go.
That's compensation 101.
He's going to come back next week and join us down here at Four Strains back in the Hookah Lounge, and we'll have a conversation about the average wage or the minimum wage. It depends. Thanks for joining us, Scott. We'll see you next week.
And now, this week's HR update with Scott Fable.
We are back for another week of the HR Minute with Scott Fable. Did I say that right?
You got it.
All right, down here at Four Strains in the back of the house in the Hookah Lounge. Come down here and join Mike. You might remember Four Strains, 1548 West Alameda. That's also where we have our products placed from our sponsors. We're going to have some Cushley products placed there, anonymous bags. We got the skunk box. Come check them out, 1548 West Alameda. Come say hi to Mike and join us in the back. This week for the HR Minute, Scott's going to give us a little bit of insight to the minimum wage and join with special guests back for another appearance, Antoine from Bubble Sonics, giving us some ultrasonic cleaning, but also going to jump on the mics because we're going to talk about wage, whether it's minimum wage, average wage, living wage. Let's talk about money, just as important, especially if you're in the industry trying to make a wage, pay for your kids, pay for your house. If you're like me, you got a kid. Scott has a kid. Anton, you have any kids? No children yet. But eventually we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to talk about wages, right? Because everybody would love to do this for free. I know I would love to sit around and smoke cannabis and talk on microphones all day long, but eventually I have to pay the rent. So let Scott take his HR minute, and then let's do this week a little conversation Q&A afterwards. Scott, I'm going to give you the microphone. This is your minute.
All right. So in November, we all know about cannabis winning 3 out of 4 that we needed. You know, DC being the most little known and often overlooked. Liberal measures to increase the minimum wage in 4 states and 2 California cities were voted on, and they all passed. So that's pretty good. And then paid sick leave laws were also enacted in Massachusetts. Another very, very interesting thing. 2 cities in New Jersey and also Oakland also had increases in the minimum wage. Now, President Obama's been pushing for increase of the minimum wage from the current $7.25 to $10.10 to index with inflation. You know, we'll see as Republicans supermajority if things are going to happen.
Thank you, Scott, for that HR Minute update. Hey, let's turn this into a conversation this week. Since it is such an important topic, I don't want to spend just 60 seconds on it. Let's spend at least 6 minutes on it. We have Antoine from Bubble Sonics here who's going to give us some ideas about wages. Let me do a little bit less talking and turn the microphones over to somebody else. Go ahead, gentlemen. Talk about wage. Change our lives.
The way I feel, I think that'd be great if they raised the minimum to $10.10. What about the average people who's already making $10.10? Do they get that $3 increase too? Or is it just the people at the minimum that get the $3 increase? You know, I think everybody should get that amount of increase if we're going to do it that way.
There's not only wage, but just social well-being and things around bringing livelihood and the health of the American population up. Just something that needs to be addressed.
They want us to eat healthier, though, but eating healthier costs more. They
That's
want
true.
us, you know, to be more active, but they're closing parks and building 24-hour fitnesses and gyms, which we have to pay to use. Everything to make us better, we have to pay to make active. I mean, not every situation. You could go outside and still run and jog, though, but
how can you live a life that is, healthy and comfortable?
Yeah.
I think every American would say feels great to struggle and to overcome, but sometimes you need some comfort.
Yeah.
When you should come home, it should be comfort, not struggling just to make ends meet. That way, you're never around for your kids. Big thing is people working for minimum wage and they're doing it 3 times over.
Yeah. But someone told me like the dollar is time pretty much. The more dollars you have, the more free time you have. Instead of cutting your grass, 15 minutes to cut your grass, you pay somebody to get that 15 minutes back. And that's what the dollar actually can help you do. But if you're not making enough, you're not getting that time. You're just using your time. You're stretching yourself to continue to be in debt. And
the cost of living, especially in urban areas, inner cities, and the cost of livings are actually going up by just a byproduct of the way things are.
You're getting paid by how much you produce, but also by time, and it varies in different places. Some people get around $8 an hour, some range up $20 an hour. It just depends on where you at. But
is it where you at or how good you are?
I used to think it was how good you are, but it's where you at because there's different payment methods. Because by the hour, you could trim 2 pounds in 8 hours. You're still only going to get paid for 8 hours of work.
Right.
But say you went to a company who did pay for a pound, you could make 4 times as much money that is. But a lot of people are still using the traditional way of paying people by the hour and using the average wage that other jobs have. But to me, I feel that we are helping people make a lot of money. So we should be treated very well. You know what I'm saying?
That's a microcosm of kind of sales jobs versus corporate jobs. On the one hand, you're giving wages, you're providing $10 an hour. Doesn't matter how much you trim. There's no incentive for you to go fast.
Yeah.
Or there's no incentive for you to trim as close as you can to the bud.
Yeah.
Now, if you are incentivized for production, paid on weight,
yes,
that's a bigger motivator for you.
That would be.
Again, there's 2 different ways of doing it. So if you are providing a wage, I'd say at the same time, you need to keep those employees happy. And how do you do that? Yeah. You look out for them.
Not many people make over $20 an hour. If they do, they got like special certificates and things like that.
Do the math. An average of 2,000 hours a year. If you're making $10 an hour, that's $20,000.
Exactly.
What are you going to do after you pay your taxes, pay your rent, pay your food, and pay your bud?
I'm going to tell you.
What are you going to do? Are you going to save any money? You're going to invest any money?
You're going to go to government office and ask them for assistance. And then that's going to be your next step.
I think the question is, how do we allow those on the bottom scale to equalize themselves towards the top without necessarily directly with impunity just going after those who have it? How do we set up a system that allows those on top to naturally lose it and let those on bottom gain it without it being a direct destructive force?
But I'm not saying take the money from the people that have it. I'm just saying that obviously we know that we're capable of making that much. Like,
absolutely.
So why are other people
access to specialized skills? I mean, because that's really what you said earlier. That's what it kind of takes, right?
Yeah, that's what they put on you. They said that you have to go through these schools and training and all that. If a person could just do the job, why can't he just do the job and get this money? Why does he have to go through your school and your program to do the things that he can already do? Or he went to the library and learned how to do? Or he went online and watched a video how to do? Legal, there's still 1,000 people that couldn't get it because they don't qualify. So us who do qualify should be held, at a different standard than the average person, because in a way we did the right thing for a certain amount of time, and now we're able to now help. We can use this to help people. You know what I'm saying? Right. We can't help people by getting $10 an hour.
I would agree.
Go out and help somebody in need, honestly, off of the wages that I make.
Yeah.
But if the industry looked at the industry as its own industry and seeing if we
doing
all,
comparisons.
because I don't know what they fear. Everybody's going to get into it. Everybody can't get into it because of the rules to allow you to even be a part of this industry. So obviously, everybody's not going to be able to do it.
Sure.
So why not make the people who are a part of it,
Yeah.
capable of changing other people's lives as well?
I totally agree with you, Andrew. Just looking at, what I've seen and observed, I think it starts with management and owners taking a step back and saying, this is something great we can create. And that all starts with the employees from the ground up. I totally agree with you. And I think that being able to offer the employees, the direct employees of the cannabis industry, a higher status of living, I think it's a great opportunity to actually show how mature we really are.
Yeah, I'm saying we already thinking out the box. Every day I see creative minds, and if they have a ceiling that eventually they're going to reach, we're going to see creative minds go so far, just because of pay minimum wage. It exists in this company and it shouldn't. Our minimum wage should be $20. there's no reason for it not to be.
Right. Yeah, there are those specialized jobs, some significant jobs that are the highly paid jobs in the cannabis industry.
Thank you for coming back down to 4 Strains off of 1548 West Alameda. Come down and say hi to Mike. That's where we're recording, in the back room, the Hookah Lounge. This is where you can also find products from all of our sponsors. Thank you once again, Scott, for your extended stay this week, for your HR Minute. Turned into a HR 20 minute, but that's all right.
We could talk all day.
You want to come back and give us another minute next week, maybe the week after, and see how this goes?
Yeah, if things come up that are new that I think the audience would enjoy listening to, then yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming down this week. Thank you, Antoine from Bubble Sonics, Cleaning Pipes. You want to tell people where they can find you, check out what you do exactly?
Yeah, Bubble Sonics. You can reach me at Facebook at Bubble Sonics Clean Colorado, or you can give me a text at 720-590-0395. Here in your Denver area, got dirty bungs or glass pipes, hit me up. I'm just like, what? Like, man, I doubt it.
Oh my God, I'm peeking!
I love cannabis.
Right.
Well, there you go.
Yay!
Smells so green.
I'm fucking wasted.
Hello, everybody. This is Jay Thatcher from Cures Not Wars, former medical marijuana POW, now back on tour, back with vengeance, as I say. And I'm here to tell you about the one issue that's going to blow the lid off the entire war on drugs. Stay tuned.
I got just the thing to make you smile.
Marijuana.
I'll turn that frown upside down and make you happy. Take my hand now, I'll take you somewhere and play, baby.
Marijuana.
Go kick off your shoes, let's go dancing in the rain. Hi, marijuana.
Rock it to the moon.
Fly. Hi, marijuana.
Rock it to the moon.
Fly. Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana. I live and love, you make me laugh.
Marijuana.
You're the reason I get out of bed
En la mañana.
Oh, sigo enamorado de tu luz. Ooh, I love the way you chase away my blues. Hi, marijuana.
Rock it to the moon.
Hi, marijuana.
Rock it to the moon.
Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana. Hi, marijuana.
Very interested in learning about this Ibogaine. I've been hearing bits and pieces about it. Last time we spoke about some political issues and activist issues. Let's learn all about this Ibogaine.
Well, I do want to tell you all about Ibogaine and how it works and why it's different from any other way that they've had up to date for handling the problem of drug addiction. The big news actually now is they've finally given Ibogaine to somebody with Parkinson's disease, and what they've done is they've given them very, very low doses, and a low dose regimen over a month has reversed to at least a 40-50% extent Parkinson's disease on a person down in Mexico who's tried it. So it ties in really with how Ibogaine works in the first place. The thing that makes Ibogaine different from methadone and Subutex and all these other drugs that they have is Ibogaine is a corrective treatment. It's not a maintenance drug. It's not a simple detox where you've got the junk chemistry out of your body, but you're still craving. It goes down to the core of what addiction is, and it really does define what addiction is. And addiction has always been not a moral dilemma, but a serious physical problem. So let's start with what addiction is and what addiction is not. Addiction is not a behavior. Drug taking ceases to become a behavior the moment you become addicted. Then it's no longer naughty behavior or your bad choices. It's something that your body is forcing you to do. So all addictions work in the dopamine centers of the brain, and they damage the neurons that are involved with the dopamine pathways in one of two ways. Either like with opiates, they cause the parts that produce the dopamine and spit it out to fade away, to wilt away. Or in the cases of cocaine and methamphetamine, it takes the parts of the neurons that receive the dopamine and recycle it back into the body, and it interferes with that process, either by making too many receptors so that you have a heightened expectation for dopamine to feel normal, or they interfere with the reuptake, with the transport of dopamine to the parts of the brain that receive the dopamine. So what Ibogaine does is it actually goes down to the DNA level. It goes down into the neuron, and the neurons will grow back the parts that spit out the dopamine in the case of the opiate, or they will wilt away the excessive number of receiving sites, as in the case of methamphetamine, so that you are really returned to the pre-addicted state. So physically, not only does this directly correct the problem with addiction, but it also shows beyond any reasonable doubt which drugs are addictive and which drugs are not addictive. And I think you already know the drug that's very near and dear to us is not addictive. That, of course, is cannabis. The reason Ibogaine works on everything but cannabis is because cannabis is not active in the dopamine centers. There might be like a third-hand reaction down the road, but the direct action of cannabis is in a completely different set of pathways, and it has more to do with dreaming than it has to do with dopamine stupor. So what we found out from the Ibogaine research, because they wanted to see if it would affect quote-unquote marijuana addiction, and they found that it had no effect on it. And so when they went to look at why that was, they realized that when you smoke cannabis, you don't release dopamine, you release melatonin. Melatonin is that stuff that makes you have good sleep at night. You can buy it at any vitamin aisle in the store. Dopamine is a completely different pathway. It's not really directly affected by any of the cannabinoids at all. What cannabinoids are famous for cases like MS, for instance, is the production of anandamide. Anandamide is a growth factor that's important to all cells in the body being able to build up cell structure. So it's a growth factor in cannabis, which is kind of like the growth factor that's released when you take Ibogaine. Ibogaine releases a growth factor called GDNF. And GDNF is a growth factor specifically for neurons. This is what causes your neurons to grow back to the way they're supposed to be, thus providing the correction to the damage that addictive drugs have caused the person that is addicted to them. The medical definition, it's actually been something that's always been around, but because of the need to include cannabis into the bin of addictive drugs, they've had to water down the definition of addiction to the point where you can have Oprah Winfrey on TV telling a crack whore that Oprah can relate to the crack whore because Oprah's addicted to French fries. It's funny, but it's also very insulting, because this is not a craving for French fries. It's not a fixation. It's not ADD. This is something that your body is hijacked by the damage that the addiction has done. So for a heroin addict, it's the most obvious. That's the clearest way to understand addiction. A heroin addict has been injecting the artificial source of dopamine, because that's all heroin is. That's all the opiates are, is they're an external drug that mimics dopamine. And your body eventually, since your body is very adaptable, it says, well, why do I need to produce my own dopamine when I've got the steady supply of external dopamine coming in, which is giving me more than way enough dopamine to have my levels where I feel comfortable. So what happens is when they don't do the artificially injected dopamine substitute, their body has either reduced the production of its own natural dopamine, or in the extreme cases has stopped producing dopamine altogether. So you know that it's a dopamine-affected thing because we know that dopamine is how your body manages pain. And if you don't have enough dopamine in your system, you're going to feel pain. If you have no dopamine in your system, you're going to feel pain in parts of your body where you've never realized that your body had nerves before. I mean, your stomach has nerves, and every time your stomach churns, nerves are pressing against nerves, and because of your natural dopamine level that's supposed to be there, you don't feel that. Just like breathing is painful. Breathing has neurons in your chest and your ribs pressing against each other, and that should cause pain. But dopamine is there to keep that from being painful. When you have no dopamine production of your own and your heroin is run out, you start feeling pain in these places where you've never felt pain before, and that pain is inconsolable. You can't just ignore it. You can't talk somebody down from it. It's like the 12-step model is all about talking somebody out of wanting to use drugs. You can't talk somebody out of dealing with the pain when every breath they take, every move of their stomach is painful. You have to treat that. You have to treat that medically. You can't treat that psychologically. You can't treat that with the group therapy session.
So this is definitely looking at it from a biological standpoint, where doctors will talk about withdrawals and the DTs and various other types of withdrawing from a chemical can be physically harmful to the body because your body has become addicted to it, which is slightly different from a kind of an AA stance of looking at an addict. An addict was more defined by what happened to a person when they drink, meaning the actions that resulted after they took a drug or after they started drinking, is kind of how one was defined as an addict, not necessarily a biological switch like you cross the line, or even a consumption quantity where, you know, if you drink 10 beers, you're an alcoholic, or you drink 2, you're fine. It was simply looked at as behavior in the sense of, if I give you a drug or if I give you a beer, what will you be doing next? And that's what defines you as an addict. If I give you a beer and 3 days later you're under a bridge, you know, pissing yourself and robbing banks, you might have a problem. If you drink 10 beers and simply wake up with a hangover but go to work and then tend to your family and go about life, you may not have a problem regardless of the quantity you drank. So there's a thin line of distinction. You're focusing on specifically a biological aspect that cannabis itself cannot attach itself to the body like a heroin or an alcohol, where you can go through a DTs or a withdrawal or some type of physical reaction.
Nobody's ever been able to isolate anything close to a withdrawal symptom from use of cannabis, other than, of course, the taking away of the nice feeling and a nice effect. You know, you reverse that and you go back to your regular state, and that can seem like a downer or a bummer, but it's not going to have you writhing on the floor in pain. Now, as far as alcohol, as far as what you said about alcohol, though, I mean, yeah, you can get drunk every weekend and still function at your job, be the quote unquote functional alcoholic. And that's great rhetoric for the people who sell alcohol. But the thing is, the physical addiction is still there. It's how you manage it that determines whether or not you're motivated to go into treatment for your addiction. So if we take a drug like methamphetamine can really rapidly bring you to the point where you realize you want to quit. So when you realize you want to quit and you realize after that you can't quit because your body has been hijacked, like I say, by this need for excess dopamine, then you have a medical problem. You're not going to talk somebody out of that in an AA meeting. And the real unfortunate thing about AA is the first thing they do is they tell you you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict, and you're always going to be. Basically help the drug steal your identity from you. What you really want is to get back to the pre-addicted state, and the big part of getting back to the pre-addicted state is recovering your identity of who you were before you were affected by the drugs.
That sounds very controversial.
Yeah, because those years you spend addicted to drugs, you're not exactly building character.
Right. But isn't this going back to kind of the AA standpoint of the drinking was a tool and a symptom? It was something going on in your life before that led you to that overconsumption of the chemical. I mean,
and
let's say...
That's a good segue to the next half of this, because Ibogaine isn't just a physical solution. Ibogaine also has a very strong psychological component to it. And then that gets into a rather boring discussion of how your brain categorizes information that comes in. One thing about sleep. And of course, an Ibogaine treatment is really just a long session of REM sleep. Sleep is the healthiest thing your brain can do. But one of the things that sleep does is it takes all the raw data that your senses have brought in during the day and transmutes that into knowledge and learning and things that you actually know that are stored in your brain. And they're categorized in your brain by your emotional attachment to those things. So emotion is very important. So you have emotional problems, that you may try to treat those emotional problems yourself with an addictive drug, and then you end up addicted, and then you've got this extra problem of addiction on top of the problem you had before. So like what I said about returning to who you were before you became addicted, if who you were before you became addicted was a mess, Ibogaine can still help you. Ibogaine is like having a psychologist inside your brain who knows all the right questions to ask. When you go through therapy, it's a guessing game for the therapist to try to work through these questions, to try to get to the bottom of what's really bothering, what's really causing, the pain inside you. And fear of that pain is what keeps people in their psychological state. But Ibogaine bypasses a lot of the guesswork because inside you already know what the problem is, and you need something that will allow you to face that problem in an unemotional, detached way. And that's where Ibogaine allows you, it gives you access to all your memories, and it allows you to, in a controlled way, not like a hallucinogen where it's going to happen to you and you've got no choice over what happens. With Ibogaine, you have a choice over where the quote-unquote hallucinatory aspect of it goes. These visions that are basically a waking dream. You're awake, but you're dreaming. And the dreams are not pink elephants, imaginary things. These dreams are actually based on raw data that you've taken in that you have either associated with improper emotion so that they're miscategorized, or they never got associated and they're just basically clogging up your buffers. And so Ibogaine helps you sort through that.
Is it from this idea of the lucid dreaming that if you're dreaming but aware of it, you can start to have control over it and thus form it and reshape it and redirect it and have it manifest itself into the real world?
Right. And as a pre-treatment counselor, what I do is I try to counsel the person before they take the Ibogaine that, yes, you're going to have this experience and you have control over this. You know why you're here. And we try to give Ibogaine to people while they're starting to come back into withdrawal so that if they don't think about it on a conscious level, at least on a cellular level, they know why they're there. They know why they're taking the Ibogaine. And it's all about programming your dreams. That's why little children and hopefully adults pray before they go to bed, because they're programming their dreams. They're putting their head in the best possible space because all that time we're asleep, we think nothing's going on. Our brain is extremely active, and we have a whole life that we're not aware of that we're living in our dream time. It's a very powerful thing, and if we can be awake and aware and have that tool in our hands, not only can we deal with the addiction and how we feel about the addictive drug, stopping. One of the things that we see is people's attitudes towards the addictive drug changes. They no longer look at it as something that gave them pleasure, but they see it for what it really is. When you're high in heroin, you're not high, you're emulating being dead. You're simulating being dead. And so you choose life over death, and you never look at these death drugs as something that you would enjoy ever again. And in most successful treatments, people have just a complete 180 turn of attitude about the drugs of addiction they were on, even when they've taken Ibogaine without the intention of kicking their addiction. And that's the Howard Lotsoff story.
What does it mean to be a pre-addiction counselor?
Basically, you got to prepare somebody before they take Ibogaine. You got to let them understand, first of all, what they're getting into. You got to let them know that it is a dream and that they have a way to participate in their own healing rather than a maintenance drug where some doctor or some white coat is in charge of their healing and they don't have much to say about it. This is something where you take ownership of your problem. We make sure that the person is motivated to quit. Because, there's one thing. There are people who have taken Ibogaine many, many times and always relapse or always had some other problem. And the reason is some people are just a-holes. And that's where they are at the root of it. I won't say it's a waste because there are still people like that who turn around. But what we want to find are people who sincerely want to have a real life. They want to live a functioning life. They have a family or they have loved ones and want them back. And so they have motivation to get clean and stay clean. Those are the people that we like the best. Now, it's not to say that we would categorically reject other people, but those are the people that treatment providers are looking for because, of course, they want to have the good success rates that Ibogaine promises.
How did you get into this specific field? This is your specialty? This is what you...
This is my life's work. Yeah, my life's work is to help people get into treatment and to spread the word and to hopefully change the political situation in the U.S. Because, of course, Ibogaine is legal pretty much everywhere else in the world but the U.S. and one or two countries that the U.S. pressured into illegalizing it.
Does it require a special certification or training?
There's really nowhere you can go to learn it. There's no textbook about it. You just have to be involved with the treatment providers.
So how did you learn it? Where did your beginnings start in learning about it, administering it to others, and becoming who you are today in it?
I first learned about Ibogaine at Jack Herer's hemp tour in 1991. I was president of the student chapter of the ACLU, and I was there to give a speech with Ben Maisel and Jack Herer and some other luminaries of the movement, Chris Conrad. And Ben Maisel actually gave me the pamphlet from Cures Not Wars with the cover that said, "Boycott white powders, bring back herb." And the idea was we were going to use drug treatment as a way not only to solve the drug problem in spite of the drug warriors, but also to use it as a market separation tool that would separate the cannabis market from the hard drugs market, not only in practicality, but also in people's minds. That people would realize, when you take cannabis, you're not doing to your body what you're doing when you take heroin. And for so long, the drug warrior line was pot was just a weaker form of heroin. Well, who else wants us to think that pot is a weaker form of heroin? The drug pusher, that's who. So that their program comes into our schools telling kids that pot is heroin. They're doing the drug pusher's job for him. And I don't think it's an accident that that's going on. They want this drug war to go on, and they want the drug scene to be as hazardous as possible for these kids that are entering into it. So they pre-program their minds with things like the drug, with the DARE program and with the anti-drug, or I should say anti-marijuana ads that you have on TV and radio. And I should probably just take a second to thank Obama for not having us watching new anti-marijuana ads. Since he's been president, they haven't really produced a new anti-marijuana ad for TV. Just that we have to have people realize that addiction is not what they've been told. It's not a behavior. It's not a choice. It's an unfortunate medical condition, and putting somebody in prison for a condition that's medical is just as inhumane as putting somebody in prison for giving themselves diabetes from drinking or eating too much sugar.
It's a good point, and it actually brings us to the question of how does somebody then get involved with this treatment in a safe way, legally, health-wise? I mean, obviously, you don't want to just start reaching out to anybody on the internet and just sending random messages looking for it if it's illegal in the U.S.
Yeah, what we at Cures Not Wars recommend is that you don't try to go it alone. You don't just order it, go to Canada, order it in the mail, and do it in your hotel room there. That if you insist on doing it that way, you got to at least have somebody to watch you, somebody who's willing to stay awake all night so that they can watch you and make sure, check your pulse, make sure you're okay. But realistically, we want everybody to do Ibogaine in a clinical setting. Wonderful clinical settings that are basically, they have better equipment and better facilities than any American drug treatment, like better than any rapid detox center in America. They've got EEG machines. They can do blood platelet analysis right there. So many things that are available there so that if there's any adverse reactions, they can be dealt with right there in the clinic instead of having to drive somebody down the street to the hospital. So Mexico has two very good ones. The one where they treated the guy for Parkinson's disease is called the Genesis Center. And a Genesis Treatment Center is in Baja, Mexico. Like I say, this is just an example. We've got treatment centers, and the original, really, one of the best ones in the world is in Holland. A woman named Sarah Glatt, who has basically the original Ibogaine treatment center for the world. And so she's probably treated more people than anybody else just by the time she's been at it. The real thing we want to do now is we want to take the treatment solution to the war on drugs to the very front lines of the war on drugs. In order to do that, we want to start a clinic in Afghanistan. Since Afghanistan is where 90% of the world's heroin is coming from, we figure that would be a most appropriate place in the world to put an Ibogaine clinic.
I don't know how logistically that would work, but wow,
it's not easy, definitely, because you have to deal with, religious figures that are in control there, and there's no real central government to make anything happen on a nationwide level there. That's a plus and a minus for us. And like I say, it's a new project. We're raising funds for that right now. If you want treatment, though, that's the main thing. We want you to contact Cures Not Wars because we know all the clinics in the world. We know the people who are reputable, and we know the people who aren't reputable. We know the sources that are reputable. We know the sources that aren't reputable, so that you're going to be set. You're not going to have to. We're going to take all the guesswork out of this for you. The other thing is, if somebody says that they're giving treatments on U.S. soil, I'd be very skeptical of that, and I would also recommend you don't do a treatment that's not in a clinical setting. I can't stress that enough. I mean, it's just another hallucinogen, basically. It's not LSD-like, but it still belongs in that category. And all the hallucinogens are basically safe enough to take by yourself. But if you want to be serious and take it medically, you want to take it clinically. And you want to have a pre-treatment counselor to help set you up, and you need a post-treatment counselor to debrief you after the experience and determine, whether you need a second dose or whether you may need booster doses down the road. But for most people, they come in and over a week with one treatment at the beginning of the week and possibly a second treatment at the end of the week is all they need to do, and then they are done. No more taking drugs at all. Of course, unless they want to maintain their sobriety on cannabis.
Right. Wow. Well, I mean, I guess the best way they would understand it, since they're drug addicts, is don't go take Ibogaine like you would take your heroin, cross the border and then go to a hotel and lock yourself in a room. Take it more like you might do LSD, with a group of friends and maybe one person kind of not doing it, watching out for everybody else, and more of the clinical setting. But let's make sure people have some clear contact information, because I know there's going to be people with questions, for better or for worse. I might warn you, not everybody will agree. But let's give out some clear contact information so people can learn more and maybe follow up and have some direct interaction.
A good immediate contact to use would be the email address of Dana Beal, who's the founder of Cures Not Wars. And so that's Dana, D-A-N-A, at Phantom, PHANTOM.com. So that would be the first and quickest way to get in contact with us. We do have activists in Cures Not Wars all over the country. I myself being one of them, I handle the Midwest. So if you want to talk to somebody in person about that, you can contact me if you're in any of the Midwest states, let's say from Chicago to Reno. I'm willing to drive out and talk to you and your family and give you the counseling you need to determine whether Ibogaine is right for you. And you can contact me at 402-438-4577. What we're looking for right now are people who have Parkinson's disease or any of these other neurological, neuropathic, progressive diseases, because those people may be able to be involved in the study that's currently going on at the Genesis Clinic down in Mexico, where basically in the rest of the world, they've already determined that Ibogaine works and is safe to treat people with for addiction. And so now they're going into looking at the other uses of Ibogaine, because Ibogaine holds great promise as an antiviral agent, and because of this neurological growth factor turning out to be effective against diseases like Parkinson's, that and muscular dystrophy diseases that are involved with your neurological system in decay, so that we can have you grow back your neurological system without the problems of side effects and other drugs, without having to be taking a drug all your life. And now we find out with very low doses. Now, this person with Parkinson's that took it and had a 50% improvement in his symptoms. This is a guy who found a wheelchair, who can now get out of that wheelchair and dress himself, feed himself, go to the bathroom by himself. This is the same sort of miracle I saw with cannabis medicine with a guy who had cerebral palsy, who was also confined to a wheelchair, and then he was able to get out of his chair. And, just amazing reductions in the symptoms of his cerebral palsy, to the point where you could almost redefine what cerebral palsy is. I mean, his mental retardation went away when he was on pot. We look at this, and then we started to realize the truth about anandamide, that there's this growth factor that pot causes your body to produce that works in your muscles. And so not only are you treating the spastic condition, but you're also adding a correction to the problem. And that's why cannabis is so good for slowing the onset of MS. So now what we want to know is, for diseases that aren't muscular, but diseases that are neurological in nature, will Ibogaine work on all of them? But here in America, we can't even begin that research until we finish the addiction research. And the addiction research is tied up in federal funding that is being denied because no corporate entity wants to invest in Ibogaine because it's not a big money-making drug. I mean, who wants to invest in a drug that you only take once, right? And also a drug that makes people not need the other drugs that they're selling. So the drug companies are very hostile to Ibogaine. So it's up to the government to pay for the funding. And the government would rather waste that funding on DEA war toys rather than things that are actually going to solve the problem. So we need to apply pressure to Congress and to the DEA and to NIDA and say somebody's got to step up and pony up the money to finish the FDA approval trials for Ibogaine, because the FDA approvals for Ibogaine are somewhere in the very middle of the process, and for lack of funds, they haven't gone forward. We should have had Ibogaine available decades ago, but because of money, we're still waiting for it to be available in America. And so Cures Not War says, well, we're not waiting for America to come around. We're going to start clinics everywhere else in the world, and hopefully that will shame our government into doing the right thing with Ibogaine.
Wow. Those are some powerful stories, and this definitely requires a follow-up in a couple months to see where exactly the industry has moved forward and where treatment is in the U.S. Let's make sure to touch base on this in a couple months, because I think a lot of people are going to really have a lot of questions and possibly be seeking more information. This is good stuff.
That would be good. And we can put together a whole new interview just based on the questions people have that will contact you about it as well. And the other thing, too, is I understand the focus of your radio show is about building an industry. And unfortunately, Ibogaine is never really going to build up an industry. So what you're doing by talking to me about Ibogaine right now is a real genuine public service announcement. And so if anyone ever wonders whether you're doing something for free or doing something for the public that's not just about the Benjamins, you can point to Ibogaine and say, look, we're telling people how not only they can get around their addiction problem, but how we can separate the cannabis market from the hard drugs market so they can never again, with any credibility, accuse us of endorsing drug use or promoting drug use when what we really are doing is promoting the anti-drug. And we know cannabis is the anti-drug, but now we also know that Ibogaine is the antidote.
Absolutely. I like that. The anti-drug. I think that's what my new slogan is going to be. I'm the anti-drug.
Yes. Use the hell out of it. That's one of my key speech points in my Back with a Vengeance tour.
Very nice. Cool, man. We could go on and on for hours and hours, but let's break it up and do it in segments. So let's touch base in a couple months, do another little segment, and
then the other question I had for you is, would you be interested in interviewing one of the guys that runs the Ibogaine clinics?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get you hooked up with that. Maybe your next show can be, a combination of me talking and them talking. He's in Mexico.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. That would be very interesting.
One other guy in America, he's the one guy that I know of that I would actually trust to do a treatment on U.S. soil. His name's Dimitri Mugenis.
Uh-huh.
And if you search Dimitri on NPR, he was on an extensive NPR interview.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like a guerrilla treater. And he to me, he's important to me because he was one of the first people that I pre-treatment counseled.
Uh-huh.
And actually, it was more about counseling his family than it was about him, because he was fully motivated to get off of heroin and methadone. But his family had seen him go in and out of so many treatment facilities that they just didn't believe anything was going to work anymore. And they were the ones that had to pay for the treatments. So it was basically giving them hope and making them realize that there was something different. And people realized that Ibogaine was made illegal in the name of the drug war and in the name of fighting drugs. They understand already how hypocritical the war on drugs is, and so it's perfectly clear to them why Ibogaine had to be gotten out of the way if they were going to continue their war on drugs. When you realize this and you tell everybody around it, there was a peaceful solution to the drug problem, but we made it illegal, and that you have to leave this country to get this treatment, it's really one of the things that will help blow the lid off the entire war on drugs.
Yeah.
That's a good parting shot to probably add into the piece.
All right, man. That sounds good. Cool. Well, we got a lot of good content
support,
there.
Man. You've been a really good support. Well, it was a good year for hemp for me. I sold $1,000 worth of Nebraska seed.
Nice.
So it's nice. Yes, I'm helping to build this new hemp industry in Colorado until we can have one in Nebraska. All right. Well, you get to it then, man. You take it easy.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Have a good one.
Always do.
Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to come back next week. We're going to have more guests lined up, speaking with dispensary owners, growers, business owners. Make sure to follow us on all of the social media, Facebook, Google+. You can listen to our shows live from the website or your preferred listening platform. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, even YouTube, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.